Good morning, everyone. It is November 27, 2019, one day before Thanksgiving. And we are trying to get through the LCD-1 versus the HD6XX/650 comparison as quickly as possible, which is why I am up at 4:30 in the morning so I can complete the mids test, and later today I can finally upload the treble test so that everybody has kind of an understanding, because I know sales are right around the corner on Friday for Black Friday. Hopefully this will be of some help. Yesterday we completed the bass test, and the conclusion was essentially that both headphones sound very, very similar. The only differences of note is that the 6XX/650 has just a little bit more bass boost. They both sound clear in the bass that is present, but a little bit more bass boost. The second thing is that the 6XX/650 is slightly wider. It's not the same extent wide as the Sundara. Now, the Sundara versus the LCD-1, I told you the Sundara are noticeably wider. The 6XX, not a whole lot wider. It's definitely appreciable, meaning when you do an A and B test, it's there, but it's not to the same degree more open back, more open sounding as the Sundara. I think that the extra with the 6XX provides a tiny bit better separation of instruments, a little bit more clarity. But other than that, the two headphones sound very similar. The one thing that is consistently problematic, maybe, or it's a good thing, it depends on your personal taste, is that the LCD-1 continually sounds closed off. It's not a very open sounding headphone, despite the fact that they are open back headphones. I said repeatedly that this is at most an average soundstage, and in some instances it sounds below average soundstage, and that continues to be true no matter how many times I go back to these headphones and test and retest songs with different headphones. It just seems to be the character of this headphone, and like it or not like it, that's totally up to you. All right, so for today's test, we have the mids, and we have three songs queued: Why Am I Like This by Orla Gartland, Want You Back by Haim, and Dreamer by Charlie XCX. I have both headphones, the LCD-1 and the 6XX, plugged into an AB switch, which is itself plugged into the Monolith Desktop AAA amplifier, currently set at negative 25 decibels. We have the LCD-1 on my head, and I think we're ready to get going. All right, so let's start with Why Am I Like This? Here we go. The beginning of the song, there's an acoustic guitar, and it sounds clear, although there's a bit of lingering reverberation, which I think is pleasant. Her voice is clear, no distortion, no harshness. Her voice can get pretty sibilant with some headphones, many headphones, and it's natural for her voice to do that. But the LCD-1 is capable of restraining the sibilance considerably. These are amongst the smoothest sounding headphones I have heard. I will give credit to Audeze for that. That the LCD-1 is exceptionally smooth. Very well done on that mark. On the other hand, it's not particularly accurate either, because her voice has natural sibilance recorded in the song. When she's saying, why am I like this? Why am I like this? There's this bass instrument that's coming up. There's a bass, there's a drum, and that sounds like a bass guitar as well that's being mixed in. And then there's supposed to be, I think, a hi-hat or something that's being hit, and it just sounds really muted. Or a snare drum, not a hi-hat. Her voice sounds about a step ahead of all the instruments on our imaginary soundstage. The sound is coming directly into my ears, so it's not a 3D effect. It doesn't sound like it's above me or behind me or a little distant from me. It just sounds very close to my ears. Now when the entire mix is playing with all the instruments at max volume, her voice is still audible. And I would say it's probably about half a step to a step ahead of the instruments. So overall, no harshness, no peakiness. no ear pierciness. Her sibilance is well controlled, but obviously, as I've said, her sibilance is naturally in this song, and if you don't hear it, then the headphone is rolling that frequency. It's subduing the sibilance. That's good for pleasure listening. I don't know if it is particularly helpful if you are a professional mixing and mastering. You're an artist that is trying to get some sort of detail into your music. And with the smoothing effect that this headphone continues to do with all of the frequency range, means that you might be persuaded to add some emphasis in some respects to your song. If you're the artist or mixing, mastering, whatever, you may be maybe pushing yourself to add more emphasis that really doesn't need to be added. So in a song like this, you might sit there and go, I wish there was a little bit more sparkle to her voice. I'm sitting in my booth and I really need to add a little bit more sparkle wearing the LCD-1. So you help that frequency, you boost it by a couple of decibels, and now it sounds, that sounds good on your LCD-1. You master it, you publish it, it goes out, and somebody else listens to it on any other pair of headphones, essentially, and they go, ouch, that is sibilant, because her voice already had the sibilance in it. And the only thing that the LCD-1 did is bring down that sibilance for you in the booth. And you thought in your mind, I think it needs a bit of sparkle. Well, the sparkle was probably already there, and you just boosted it by another couple of decibels that did not need to be done. Now, obviously, if you are a professional, you have more than one pair of headphones. If you do this for a living, you have more than one pair of headphones. That is a given. So you will have your LCD-1 on, mix with it, and then you'll put on another pair of headphones that you know is probably more like the vast majority of headphones out there, and you'll listen to it and you go, okay, and then you'll dial it back down. Yes, you'll do all that stuff, which begs the question: why are people saying that the LCD-1 is perfect for mixing and mastering? Because professionals, I think, have more than one headphone, and they're clearly not going to rely on just one headphone the entire time, right? It doesn't matter if it's the LCD-1 or any other headphone. It doesn't matter. They're not going to do that. And I think it's a little disingenuous and misleading for proponents of the LCD-1 who say that professionals wear this to not also point out the fact that professionals also have other headphones that they use at the same time, more often than not. But hey, I'm not a sound engineer, so what do I know? Actually, I'm just using Logic, which I think is probably a little bit more appropriate. All right, so let's switch to the Sennheiser. Oops, get my pen cap here. Ooh, oh, that's good. All right, we're back to the Sennheiser, and we are going to increase the volume. That was negative 25, which was loud enough for me to hear the song and barely hear my voice. The Sennheiser are 300 ohms, so I'm going to have to increase this to probably negative 10-ish, right about there. So I've got the headphones now at negative 10 decibels and switched, and here we go. No, I was fairly close. Actually, it's probably a little bit quieter. It's a negative 12, negative 13. That's about right. The guitar sounds exactly as the LCD-1. The lingering reverberation is a little bit clearer on the Sennheiser, I think. I'll have to go back and check. Her voice has that tiny bit of sparkle, a little bit more energy in the sibilance, the S sounds, that the LCD-1 just cut off at the knees. There's a noticeable difference. It's a minor one, but it's noticeable. That's the sparkle I'm talking about, just a decibel or two, and you add it and you go, there it is, there's the sparkle. It's still smooth. It doesn't sound harsh at all, even with that extra sibilance presence. The bass guitar sounds, I think, just almost the same as the LCD-1. There might be a slight teeny tiny emphasis on the Sennheiser on the bass, but it's still clear and it doesn't interfere with the mids, just like with the LCD-1. And you get that snare drum. The snare drum, it has a tiny bit more volume to it than on the LCD-1. It still doesn't interact with the mids. It's not interfering. It's not causing any muddiness. I will say that the Sennheiser has almost this effect that it's not just dead center presentation. Her voice is a little bit more present on the left ear cup and on the right. And her voice sounds overall about a step to 2 steps ahead of the rest of the mix. Maybe a step when everything is playing. So as far as the presence of the mids, her vocals, where they are on her imaginary soundstage, I think they're pretty close to the LCD-1. No harshness, no peakiness. Okay, so let's go back real quick. And I want to test for that that sibilance. I want to make sure it's actually there. Okay. I'm going to switch to the LCD-1. I'm going to keep it at negative 22.5. And here we go again. Yeah, it's definitely, it's a night. Yeah, it is a night and day difference, actually. It is a night and day difference, and here's why. When you do an A/B test, you hear the LCD-1 first, you get the character, you switch to the Sennheiser, and you get the character, and it sounds like, is there a little bit more sparkle? And you go back to the LCD-1, and you listen to it again and go, oh yeah, there's definitely more sparkle. So here's how I explain it. I love microphones, and when I record, my voice has natural sibilance that sometimes gets really harsh with certain microphones, Rode microphones, for example, some cheaper USB microphones, things of that nature. They get a little bit too sibilant. So I record an Audition, Adobe Audition. Then I do go through all my processing, and then I get to compression. And then what I do is, part of the whole processing portion is there's a de-esser. And there's a dynamics processing filter that you can add that takes away some of the harshness. And when I apply it, it gets like this muffled S sound. Where the sibilance might be, it would be shublunch, shublunch. Okay, so just pay attention for a second. This is how it actually works. So if I say the word cats, you hear the S at the end, right? Now, if I apply the filtering, this is how it actually comes out then. It goes catch, catch. There's a blunting of that S sound. And if you hear it back and forth, you go, oh my God, yeah, that's totally what's going on. That's the type of effect that I hear from the LCD-1 when she's singing. The S sounds are blunted. It's sh. It's not s, it's sh. So they're pulled back. Now, that may sound very, very pleasant to some people who are treble sensitive. I get that. I'm treble sensitive to a degree. And that's very pleasant to listen to for long periods, especially if you have a song that's a little bit harsh for you. But it's not accurate. And if you are in the booth and you're mixing and mastering, you go, this needs a bit more sparkle to her voice, and you add it, all of a sudden, it will be way too much for somebody else down the chain. Which is why, once again, the real professionals are sitting there with 2 pairs of headphones, going back and forth, because that's how it's typically done. I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you are a professional and you say, I only use 1 pair of headphones, go ahead, comment. You use only 1 pair of headphones, but it's my understanding that there are multiple headphones available just to check the mix. All right, so let's go to Want You Back by Haim. We are at negative 22.5, so I'm going to bring it back to negative 25 of the LCD-1 on my head, and here we go. You've got the piano and the guitar. The guitar, it's a little hard to hear when the piano is playing. The piano has this lingering reverberation which sounds smooth. The primary vocalist also sounds pretty smooth. You've got the backup vocalist now, left and right. When the bass is not playing, there's no drum, I can hear the different tonalities. When all 3 are not singing, I can hear the backup vocalist left and right with different tonalities. And now when all 3 are singing and the piano is playing, the bass guitar is playing, and you've got a bit of drum. The backup vocalist voices meld, and they sound almost like one. There's not enough separation for me to say I hear two. Indeed, I would say I only hear one backup vocalist at this point. And when you have the entire mix playing at a louder volume, the mids sound almost shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the instruments on our imaginary soundstage. There's no harshness, no peakiness, no ear pierciness. Very smooth presentation. There are S sounds here that are clearly blunted, sibilants. So instead of very different. Yeah. When the bass is not... So this has been the response with this headphone on this particular song repeatedly. When the bass is not playing, there's no drum, the three vocalists have their own different tonalities. I can hear the backup vocalists differently. They have their own individual tonality. As soon as the bass comes in, that's gone. Sorry, no can do. You can hear just one backup vocalist, even though both are singing at the same time. It melds it. It brushes shoulders. I wouldn't say it distorts the mids, but it does, in fact, obfuscate some of the mid detail. That's been consistent every single time I've listened to the LCD-1 with Want You Back. And it remains the case at this point. Other than that, it sounds very smooth. It sounds very pleasant. Again, it's a very pleasant sounding headphone. It's a good headphone, but you are missing out on some of the details. The separation of the multiple vocalists is mixed in this song. It is there. These headphones simply don't provide it all the time. And when there's a bass instrument that comes in, that separation kind of goes away. Part of the reason, my hypothesis, is that because there's not a whole lot of soundstage here on these headphones. Average at best. A little bit wider soundstage might help bring out the separation of instruments, separation of vocalists a bit better. So let's go to not the LCD-1, we just had that. Let's go to the Sennheiser and test this song. I'm going to increase the volume to negative, let's say negative 12. No, let's do negative 13. And let's restart. Here we go. Yeah, obviously, wider soundstage. The piano is almost the same sounding as on the LCD-1. I don't really hear any difference of note. The guitar sounds the same. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back down to negative 15. I want to test something real quick. We're at negative 15.5. I'm going to go back a couple of seconds here to 14 seconds. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. Right off the bat, the backup vocalists are louder on the Sennheiser than on the LCD-1 at 14 seconds to 21 seconds. And what it does is that both of their different tonalities are obviously different on the Sennheiser. Obviously different. Not only are they louder on the Sennheiser, not only are they more present in left and right ear cup. So one is on the left ear cup, the other is on the right ear cup, clearly. But they also have very distinctly different tonalities. Absolutely obvious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right now. I'm going to go back to 14 seconds, listen to this for about 6 seconds, stop, switch to the LCD-1, and I'm going to keep the LCD-1 at around negative 22 decibels when we get there, okay? So this is going to be a bit of silence, but bear with me. Here we go. We're on the Sennies. We're negative 22.5 on the LCD-1. Here we go. Yeah, the Sennheiser tend to have a little bit more clarity to the backup vocalist. Let me try again. Yeah, just more clear. It's not night and day. It's not as if, oh my God, I cannot believe that the LCD-1 are obfuscating it, destroying it completely, hiding it. It's not that. But when you do an A and B test, it becomes apparent. It's like, whoa, okay, so there is a difference. There is a difference. Now, if you keep increasing the volume on the LCD-1, you might be able to get a bit more emphasis out of those backup vocalists, but it's still going to sound a bit foggy compared to the Sennheisers. It's not a huge difference, but with that extra soundstage that the LCD-1 brings, I think that separation is a little bit better. Look, you could say that it's my imagination, that I'm not hearing it correctly. Fine, whatever. But look, once you do an A and B test, I think if you're honest with yourself, you go back and forth, you'll say, okay, there is a slight difference. And I'm just pointing that out, that there is indeed a slight difference. The other thing I will say is that the S sounds are a bit more emphasized, the sibilance is a little bit more emphasized on the Sennheiser than the LCD-1. There's a little bit more sparkle there. It's still not harsh. It's still not ear-piercing. It just has a bit more air, I guess you could say. A little bit more energy. When the entire mix is playing, I think the backup vocalists sound pretty much the same as the Sennheiser. There's a tiny difference, a little bit tiny better separation when the entire mix is playing, but it's hard to tell. I'm fine with saying that both sound practically the same when the entire mix is playing. Therefore, the backup vocalists don't really have a great separation. Piano has the same reverberation as the LCD-1 that I can tell. Vocals are clear. I think the vocals are probably easily a step ahead of the other portions of the mix. Okay, so, you know, it's interesting when there are portions of the song where the bass is not playing. And when that happens, I think there's a slight difference in the headphones and how they present the backup vocalist. They sound a bit more present on the Sennheiser, just a tiny bit more present. But when the rest of the mix comes in, you have the bass. I think both the Sennheiser and the LCD-1 pretty much sound the same. I think I hear a little bit more separation on the Sennheiser, but it's really, you're cutting hair. Cutting hair? Splitting hair. You're splitting hair. And it's so minute at that point that it's really not worth pointing it out. It's really not worth saying the Sennheiser has that better separation because it's so darn close that the positioning of your headphone, the type of ear pads you have, the type of source you have, it could totally not make any difference. So with that in mind, I don't think I would say that the LCD-1 sounds less detailed with the multiple vocalists than the Sennheiser on this song. I think they sound pretty much the same. I mean, for all intents and purposes. The only thing I will say is that the Sennheiser is a tiny bit clearer with the backup vocalist than the LCD-1. And obviously a little bit more soundstage. It's not a huge difference, but it's noticeable when you do an A and B test. All right, so let's go now to Dreamer by Charlie XCX. Now, Dreamer has one of the worst songs. I hate this song so much. But the reason we use it is because Dreamer has very harsh vocals and a very irritating bass and sub bass. And let's see how these two headphones present the vocals and the sub bass. So let's put back the LCD-1. I'm going to decrease the volume to -25. And let's start with Dreamer. That sub bass is supposed to come in fairly quickly at the beginning of the song, and I still don't hear it. It's so muted, even at -25, which is fairly loud for this song. Even at this portion, I don't hear any sibilance, any harshness. There's this sparkle effect. Let me stop. There's a sparkle effect around 25 seconds, maybe? Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, about 23 seconds. There's this weird sparkle effect that the sound engineer, the mixing and mastering artist, added to the song, which is incredibly irritating and ear piercing on any other headphone. But the LCD-1, it kind of knocks it out, which is the benefit of the LCD-1. That sparkle is all gone. So it doesn't sound ear piercing. On any other headphone, this mix would be incredibly painful for me. But the LCD-1's like, I'll just cut it off at its knees. Now I hear some of that sub bass, boom, 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 but it's really muted. I mean, it's barely there. I'll increase the volume to -20. There's no distortion that I hear, so it's not like it's not rumbling, and so there's no distortion. It just sounds like a subwoofer in somebody's trunk about 2 blocks away. It's just so light. It's not even offensive. Her voice still sucks, by the way, but it sucks a lot less with the LCD-1. No harshness, no peakiness. The vocals are clear. No distortion to the vocals. Soundstage, average at best. It sounds like you're listening to the song on bookshelf speakers in your living room. So here's what I'll say about the LCD-1 for this song. It makes this song sound palatable. It doesn't make me want to go and bash my head against a wall, which is frankly high marks for any headphone that can do that. So there you go. If you have a mix or you have a song or a track that is really harsh, like Dreamer, the LCD-1 will in fact smooth that out considerably. There are many portions of this song where it gets peaky and harsh and sibilant for me on any other headphone, but the LCD-1, most other headphones, there are some headphones that won't do that, but the LCD-1 does control it considerably. Okay, so now I've got the Sennheisers on. I'm going to increase to -15. Let's restart this thing. Here we go. It starts off pretty much the same as the LCD-1. That sub bass is a tiny bit more present than the LCD-1, but it's a close call. Oh yeah. Oh hey. Yeah, I can feel that sparkle we were talking about starting around, what was it, 24 seconds? So let me hear that again. Oh yeah. See, there's a bit of that sparkle there. It's still not harsh. So the Sennheisers also roll it off. They cut it off, but it's lower down the knees than the LCD-1. The LCD-1 just like right at the knees, chopped. And the Sennheisers, they give you another couple of inches on the knees, so you have some more stumps to stand on. And there is that sparkle. Now, when you go back and forth, you go, oh, that's what you're talking about. That's the harsh sparkle that is prevalent. Yeah, that's it. The Sennheiser don't make it harsh because they still subdue it considerably, but it is a bit more sparkle there compared to the LCD-1, so you will notice it. Let's keep playing. I think the sub bass, when it's actually mixed into the song at this point, is a bit more present on the LCD-1. It's still not distorting, so it's not overwhelming her voice, for better or worse. The headphones do sound a bit wider than LCD-1, so a little bit more soundstage. So remember when I said that the LCD-1 sounds like a subwoofer in a trunk 2 blocks away? With the Sennheiser, the example would be the subwoofer is in the trunk and it's about 50 feet away from the front door of your house. 50 or 60 feet, why am I saying 60? It's 60 feet away from the front door of your house. 60 feet and 13 inches. It's early morning. It's 61 feet away from your front door. So all I mean to say is, I just got myself wrapped up in nonsense. But here's the thing. With the sub bass, boom, 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 boom. Both headphones, they don't distort. Both have clear sub bass. The notable difference is that the LCD-1 sub bass is so muted that it sounds, like I said, it sounds like it's in somebody's trunk 2 blocks away. Now that's an exaggeration, but you kind of get the idea. What I'm trying to convey is that it's so muted. Whereas in comparison, when you have the Sennheiser on playing the song, the sub bass is more obvious. It's a bit more present. It still doesn't distort. It doesn't get harsh. It just feels as if it's in a trunk, but it's down the street, right? It's down the street instead of 2 blocks away. And as annoying as that sub bass, as that subwoofer is in your neighbor's kid's car, at least you hear it. With the LCD-1, it's hard to hear. The emphasis is lost. But with the Sennheiser, that slight boost in the bass brings out the sub bass character, that bass character. At least that's my position. Overall, both headphones have very smooth response rate to the vocals. The LCD-1 has the ability to control the sibilance considerably more, the harshness considerably more than a lot of other headphones. Specifically, when compared to the Sennheiser, I think that the Sennheiser add just a tiny bit more sparkle, a couple of decibels at most, but it's enough to kind of get the sparkle in somebody's voice or in a mix that the LCD-1 simply won't provide without EQ. All right, so let's talk about conclusions. So very similar yet again. It was similar to our test yesterday when we compared the LCD-1 to the Sennheiser on the bass response. Very, very similar. And at this part, I could say that the mids also sound very, very, very close. When I spoke about going back and forth A and B, and I said, oh my gosh, there it is. I'm trying to find differences. I want to know if there are any differences. So when I point them out, I say, here, in an A and B test, here are the differences. And then I go back and I try to tell you whether or not those differences are marked, are noticeable versus obvious versus night and day. So that's my personal spectrum. Noticeable is when you do an A and B test, you go, yes, there is a difference, a minor difference. Obvious is when it's like, okay, so the difference is there, and it is not only present, but it's also loud, right? So it's not just a tiny extra detail that might be present, but that detail really jumps out, okay? Then there is night and day. The night and day category is where you put on one headphone, you put on another, and you can say, okay, this has a totally different sound to it. That's night and day. We're not there. We haven't been there night and day yet with 2 competitors, the Sundara and now the HD6XX. It's not night and day. With the Sundara, it was more noticeable. It was more obvious differences in some respects. Some respects, it was just noticeable. So minor differences and obvious differences with the Sundara. With the Sennheiser, so far, all I'm finding is minor differences. There's not much here to separate the 2 headphones. The only thing I would say, once again, is that 2 things. The Sennheiser has slightly wider soundstage, very slightly more, which produces a little bit, tiny bit better separation of instruments, a little bit more clarity. But that's not always guaranteed to result in obvious differences. Even though you have that little bit more, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to always hear it. But the other thing that I have to note is the slight extra boost in the bass, just a tiny bit, will add a bit more emphasis in a song. And finally, the fact that the LCD-1 simply cuts off any sibilance. It blunts it. So instead of s sounds, it's sh sounds. That's the big difference. whereas the Sennheiser retain a little bit of that sparkle. It's a decibel or two more, but that may make the big difference for you, whether you enjoy your music or not, whether you add extra boost in your mixing and mastering process or you don't. And so between these two headphones, you got to decide, what do I want? Do I want something that blunts that, that kind of sibilance, or do I want something that leaves that sibilance there just a little bit? Your call. I hope that this has been of some help. I hope that if you were thinking between these two headphones which one to buy, that this particular video and all these series of videos is somewhat beneficial to you. If you like my content, if you like any of my other content, then maybe you'll consider donating to me a couple of bucks a month on Patreon. Even $2 a month will help me save money so that I can buy new and old products and test them thoroughly for you. If you like what you see, if you are a regular viewer, but you haven't subscribed, if you're a first-time viewer and you kind of think this is entertaining for you or you think it might be informative, hey, please consider subscribing. We are well over 850 subscribers. We still got a month left in 2019, and I'd like to get this channel a little bit higher if we can. If you have a request for me to review a particular product I currently own, then go ahead and visit the product review form in the description. Fill that out, submit it, and I'll get to your request as soon as I can. I hope all of you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope that you all have a wonderful end of your week and a very, very pleasant weekend. Take care.